Bank of America is pledging to address racial and economic inequalities by partnering with community colleges and universities, as well as some major employers. Today, the company announced its $25 million commitment to assist in what it calls upskilling and reskilling for Black and Hispanic-Latino students. The move comes as studies continue to show the country's education system disproportionately fails students of color. So for more on this, we want to bring in Ebony Thomas. She's the environmental, social, and governance strategy executive for Bank of America. That's a really interesting title. It sounds like you get into some really interesting, effective stuff. But let us talk about this issue today. How exactly will Bank of America use this money to help Black and Hispanic Latino students?
So thank you for the question. Thank you for having us on this morning. So the way that we will deploy this particular capital, $25 million, across a number of our markets will be to really connect jobs to students and opportunities within those particular markets. So the opportunity to have these universities, these community colleges, HBCUs, and HSIs connect to local companies in that market. We want to make sure that they have the skills necessary to be able to have, high-paying jobs over time, and the connection to these community colleges and these organizations are incredibly important.
So explain to our audience why it's so important to invest in these communities of color.
What we've seen through the pandemic is a disproportionate impact to these particular communities. And we have to act. It's that we acknowledge the issues, but then we have to act. And that action means deployment of capital resources. And so be able to connect companies, organizations who have jobs, who are really prepared to hire these students into the jobs of the future is critically important. And so this opportunity that we've brought to these communities and these community colleges and HBCUs and HSIs is our way of action and ensuring that the long-term success of these communities of color continues. This is really about wealth creation and wealth building. And you think about the opportunity for these individuals to have internships, full-time jobs, the ability to reduce student debt, to have 401ks, to have health care. This is not just about them individually. It's about the community and the impact for generations to come.
So this is a statistic that, quite frankly, I find quite surprising. Less than 40% of community college students earn a certificate or a degree within 6 years of enrollment. That's according to the Community College Research Center. Those rates are particularly lower for students of color. You mentioned the impact of the coronavirus pandemic on these communities. Can you talk a little bit more about why these students are particularly vulnerable and how the pandemic has made things worse?
You think about where these students are coming from, the communities in which they are going into these institutions. Many of them are working multiple jobs. They already come from precarious or very vulnerable circumstances. And so now to enter an institution, whether it be community college, as you just described, it takes up to a number of years for these students to matriculate through a certificate or through a degree. It's because there are so many stops. There's so many issues in which they have to overcome. These barriers that continue to in front of them. And so it just takes them longer to do that. And so our opportunity to fully immerse them into these career pathways as early as their freshman year gives them a vision to look forward to. It gives them motivation to keep going. And it also gives them resources to be able to support themselves and their family through internships and, again, through having an income that's coming in to support them and their families. So this is about not only creating pathways of success for these students, but also eliminating barriers from the moment they step foot into these institutions.
So what structural changes should be made to address those systemic issues Black and Hispanic Americans face in education and in the workforce?
One of the biggest structural changes, you think about students, we all know them that are in these communities. They are incredibly smart. They are hungry. They are eager, incredibly talented, what they need is access. And so, one of the barriers that we need to break down is this access barrier, this knowledge barrier. When I was growing up, a lot of the individuals that I saw that were professionals were teachers. And that is amazing. And ultimately, I started my career in education and was able to progress to do something else over time. But if we fully immerse students in opportunities around STEM, opportunities around healthcare, financial services, this gives them a bigger vision of what they can ultimately become. And so systemic issues around mentorship in schools as early as, elementary, middle school, ensuring that they can see career pathways, ensuring that they have technology at their fingertips so that they're able to do research and understand, and quite frankly, close that education gap that we know is within these communities as well. And there's so much work that we have to do. This is one area that we are really focused on in the bank that we want to help create those pathways, eliminate those gaps for these students, and particularly these communities. Because again, it's the student success, but it's also them being able to bring back that success to their communities. So they then become mentors. They then can break down barriers for other students. So then the cycle continues.
Ebony Thomas, thank you so much for your time. Really important. Appreciate it.
Thank you.